Hello everyone, Darko 2012 here with Global Government News, and this is the fourth and final part, Underwear Patsy, a diversion from the buildup of warships near Yemen. The fourth and final part, and what I'm doing here is I'm kind of explaining that there is a buildup in Yemen going on, and a lot of funding coming out of the U.S. on training. They're training the Yemeni government and training and building up their army, their military. You got all these ships over there, and there's something going on. And I don't necessarily know what exactly it is because, I'm not going to prophesize, I'm not going to over speculate. So, what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to I'm going to finalize what I believe, uh, or how I think, or how I see false flag government sponsored terrorism being carried out and how it applies to this situation with the warships, with the crotch bomber being used as a diversion, and how he was a patsy, and what Al Qaeda really is. So, here we go. Now, I have one more article after this which talks about the Yemeni government um, talking with Al Qaeda, dealing with Al Qaeda. But I want to break down here what I want to break down here, and this is very important, is what is the point of this? What is the point of the crotch bomber? What is the point of the Fort Hood shooter? What is the point of 9/11? Is to occupy a place, right? I've already gone over this. But when you read about Al Qaeda this and militants and the government's fighting Al Qaeda here and the government's fighting Al Qaeda there, you have to put on a different set of glasses, and you have to wonder who is Al Qaeda. Now we know that it's a government program, it's a CIA computer software program that was used to collect. It was a database. It was a database of people that that the government used in the Afghan-Russian war, where they funded these localized people to fight against. They funded the terrorists, quote terrorists, right, to fight against the Russians, to get the Russians out of there, and to cripple, quote, communism, right? So basically what I'm getting at is it's a generic term. It's a fallacy. It's an illusion. The war on terror, an illusion. And it is used to occupy nations. And so the United States, I'm going to compare with Yemen. Now I know they're totally different countries, and they're in the Middle East. Religion is used more to control people than it is in the United States. Although I think religion is used overall to control people. I'm talking about not just belief in God, but I'm talking about organized, institutionalized religion. The Illuminati, they use that to control people. I believe in God, trust me, and I believe life and after death. But what I'm getting at here is that the governments want Muslim extremists. They fund these groups that are opposing the quote government. Now what I'm saying is that the United States government has been hijacked. It is a rogue government. And the people that want to fight that rogue government, right, the government is trying to take away our sovereignty, our rights, our way of life here in the United States, and we are fighting that. And the people in Yemen, they have it pretty damn bad, and they're being occupied, and those clerics are saying we don't want occupation. Now, the Yemeni government is a puppet government, much like the United States government, because they've been taken over by foreign occupiers. So they need to appear as though they are still a sovereign government. So the U.S. and all these outside intelligence agencies are funding this little old government to fight, quote, Al Qaeda. But what is really going on here is that it's local, quote, militants, insurgents, Shiites, quote, Al Qaeda. These are normal people that have nothing else to lose, just like the Somali pirates. And overall, they're not really much of a threat, right, to the government, to the establishment. But we are funding our enemy. Hopefully, most people that don't understand false flag terrorism and nation building and foreign occupation, they are understanding this or comprehending it. We are funding our enemy, much like Afghanistan and Iraq. We fund our enemies so that so that our rogue government can use and legitimize a reason for occupying that country and then moving on to the next one, moving on to the next one. This is what this is. And the most important part that I want to make before I go back to these two articles is that just like in Yemen and Afghanistan and Iraq, and openly admits that governments fund terrorist cells or militants, or here in the United States we have militias and we have patriot movements, right? Because in the United States we even say we have their Second Amendment to bear arms in case our government starts to go rogue, right? In case we're no longer sovereign people anymore, we have the right to defend ourselves against that foreign occupation. And so we form little groups in order to show our strength against what they're trying to do, which is rain down on us with a police state, to rain down, to take away our rights, and to occupy, right? And to use our resources, and to turn us into little slaves. And so what the governments do is that they infiltrate these little patriot movements that don't want foreign occupiers. They fund them. They fund their own opposition. And what they do is they put people in second command, third in command to oversee the unit to make sure that they're not too efficient, right? To make sure that they don't actually succeed. Much like Al-Qaeda, they fund Al-Qaeda. They fund Al-Qaeda, for the most part, are people like the United States that are eventually going to be fighting this. Militants, right? And so the government in Yemen is a rogue government. It's not a sovereign government. So they have to sit there and act like they don't want the money that they're getting that's being forced onto them, and say, oh, we don't want the foreign occupiers, because they have to appease the clerics who are saying, we don't want the U.S. occupying, tell them to get out. And so I'm going to show you what I mean. In addition to fighting against Al-Qaeda in several provinces, Yemen is also battling a northern Shiite insurgency and trying to contain separatist sentiment in the south. Kirby, whose country has flirted with the idea of dialogue with Al-Qaeda, has said Yemen also needs security assistance from the United States and other allies to help combat Al-Qaeda, but has rejected direct U.S. intervention. And then when we go down, it says a group of hardline Yemeni clerics said they would call for a jihad should foreign troops intervene in the Muslim country. And of course they are. Do you see how this is being played? They're playing using the clerics because they know that the grassroots people listen to what they say. Fighting has also intensified in the North Yemen in recent weeks, with both Yemeni and Saudi forces pounding positions of Shiite insurgents who have fought central government since 2004, complaining of social, economic, and religious marginalization. And we know Shiites are legitimate groups, but what we don't know is that Al-Qaeda are also legitimate groups, but those are the groups that are under strict kind of regular funding of the intelligence agencies. Not to the Shiites, but whatever is Al-Qaeda has connections with U.S. foreign government intelligence and whatnot. Counterterrorism and defense officials say Washington has been quietly supplying military equipment, intelligence, and training to Yemen to use against Al-Qaeda. They're building up the Yemeni government. And then we move this article, Jihad Watch. Yemeni president opens to dialogue with Al-Qaeda members who renounce violence. And it says hundreds of Al-Qaeda fighters, foreigners, and Yemenis are believed to be sheltered in Yemen's mountainous regions where tribes angry at the central government hold sway. Yemenis in the group have tribal links that make it difficult for security forces to pursue them for fear of angering well-armed tribes. This is what I'm talking about. The government co-ops militia groups, their opposition. So Al-Qaeda, when they say tribal links, it means that they have government links. Much like in the United States, where we have legitimate patriot groups and militias that are allowed to exist, and the intelligence agencies, they co-opt and they infiltrate the second in command of these groups so that they can sway them, so that they can make them do stupid things, and that like in Yemen, they'll be fighting a rogue government, they'll be fighting and keeping conflict so that they can control both sides, like both sides of the political spectrum, both sides of the war, the government's control. And this cleric, al-Zadani, accused Washington and the UN of trying to impose an international occupation of Yemen. So they designated him a global terrorist.